Boxing King Media in association with Boxro. Delighted to be joined by Dominic Ingle. Dom, how are you? Weather's not great.
I'm good, thanks. No, it's not great, but it's September, October now, going into autumn, so we're getting that changeover. The gym's getting packed now. The amateur season's starting. We're getting so many kids in. It's like it's absolutely rammed in here in the weeknights. It's doing really well.
Another one of your ex-fighters, people are wondering about, he's gone AWOL. Tyan Booth, have you heard from him? What is happening? Because everyone's wondering, he's just vanished, not announced anything, not mentioned anything, he's just disappeared.
I've had, probably about 15 messages on my Instagram. What's happened to Tyan Booth? His fans are worried about him. We've heard nothing of him. And I've sent my nephew out, Luca, to find out, and he's had feedback that Tyan's all right, but he's been struck off YouTube, so he's laying low. But as far as we all know, he's okay. And that's all I know. And I daren't actually put a message on my Instagram saying, Tyan Booth's okay, because I'll get a flooded inbox of messages, because I get people on a daily basis saying, the fans are worried about Tyan Booth. But I know he's all right, because there's little telltale signs. I don't know how he does it, but he's still got a key for this gym, and he must be doing midnight workouts, because I'm still getting messages from the neighbours saying the lights were on at 2 o'clock in the morning. Do you know what I mean? So I know for a fact it'll be him, but he's a very, very strange character, but, he's funny all the same.
So if any of his fans want to see him, just wait outside the Ingle gym after
midnight.
midnight.
Actually, yeah, probably wait outside. We might get a vigil outside there with candles looking for him, you know what I mean? He's that popular.
Yeah, but most importantly, he's safe and well, and he's just lying low. Moving on, obviously it's been a while since we spoke. There's been a lot happening. So one of the first things I want to ask you about is obviously Conor Benn made his comeback a few weeks ago now in Orlando. The subject I want to ask, get your opinion on, is there was a big debate about whether he should fight or shouldn't fight. The current status of his case is that the NADP, who overlook UCAD and all the governing bodies, to my understanding, have basically overturned his suspension and basically said that he is free to fight. But obviously the British Boxing Board came out and said that they would appeal that. And to my knowledge, they still haven't appealed it, that decision. So Eddie Hearn's argument was, well, why should you sit around and wait when he can fight? But then obviously the other side, namely Talksport, the people in Talksport, obviously they were debating, saying that he shouldn't be fighting because he's not been cleared, he hasn't proven his innocence, etc. So where do you stand with them two arguments, and was it the right decision for him to fight?
My personal opinion is that he's got off on a technicality. And what I'll say is, in life, people get away with murder, robbery, serious crime on technicalities. So if he's got away on a technicality, fair play to him. He's got to carry on with his career, and waiting for other people to make decisions for him who really haven't got his best interests at all. At the end of the day, Conor Benn's got to look after Conor Benn. So if he's got away with the technicality and he's managed to box, fair play, because people like Canelo, other fighters, they've in my opinion, Canelo taking clenbuterol and getting found that with that in his system is far worse than Conor Benn getting caught with Clomid. And because he was a $1 million fighter, Canelo, he got away with it. And I don't care what anybody says, that's what he did, he got away with it.
Why was it worse when you say it was worse?
Because clenbuterols are for, a worse drug, should I say. And an high-level athlete like him, and he got away because also it was the same excuse. It was in contamination in meat, and it was this, and it was that, and the other. So realistically, it was I think it was the WBC with Ben, with Ben, and it was the WBC with Canelo, and it was the same down the same line. It was VADA. So why not? Why didn't they follow the same procedure? And the question has to be asked there. So you can't fault Conor Benn. Personally, like I've said many times before, I don't think that would have given him any advantage. People like to make a big song and a dance out of it. I think the only advantage that we're going to give him is it's going to increase his fertility, and he'd probably have more kids. But that's it, But people love a good story, don't they? I saw his fight. He boxed well enough, considering the pressure, the time he's had out, and let's see where it goes from there. But the more I go along in boxing, and the wiser I get, the more disillusioned I get with the authorities who control it all. I just don't think they do a good enough job, and they're not consistent with anything they do, whether that's the UCAD or the border control. They're not consistent. They don't show consistency. And for that reason, you know, he's got to do what he's got to do.
There's another element to this as well. I don't know if you can answer it. From what I know, and I believe this is pretty official, that apparently the traces of clomiphene that was found in his system are more consistent with food contamination and not from a tablet form.
Yeah, maybe so, but it's all the way through this. That's not the case, because I believe that UCAD are funded in a way that the more they can prove that they're doing the job correctly, the more funding or the more money they get, whatever it is. I've never really looked into it, but I think that's how the system works. I might be wrong. And because it's the way they do it is that you've got to be responsible for what it is. It's like they're not interested. It's just, well, it's in your system and it shouldn't be, unless you've got a bulletproof way that you found out that this is what it is and you can actually prove it 100%. Then we're not going to go for, but we think it's this and we're thinking it's consistent with this and it's consistent with that. They're not interested. All they want is the results at the end of the day.
And the other element to it is, to my understanding, he basically had his hair and nail follicles tested, which apparently give you like a further deeper look into what's been in your system up to a year backwards, I think it is. And apparently that didn't show any trace. This is what he's said in an interview with someone.
Yeah, possibly. And then, but and I even think even if he did that and showed the results, they're not interested enough. It's very difficult because, like, I have to refer back to the case with Kid Galahad, and he obviously took a lot of supplements, a lot of factors, and trying to get somebody to test the supplements or the people who you can recommend it was very difficult. It's not easy to try and prove yourself innocent. It's not. So, he's been, how long's he been out of the ring now?
I think he had 18 months.
It's a year and a half. So it's kind of, if he'd have proved his innocence and whatever, he'd have maybe got a 6-month ban anyway, which is consistent with most people who do it accidentally or it's contamination. Look at Dillian White when he got caught with Dynabol. Like, that's a far worse drug, and I don't even know what happened with that. He got 6 months maybe, and it's just, they're just not consistent with how they do it. So you can't fault him at all. And he's got to do what he's got to do. How it pans out from here, Canelo went on to make multi millions.
There'll be somebody, because every time we talk about failed tests in boxing, and I always go through the comments, somebody always writes, why does Dominic Ingle know so much about steroids? So I'm going to let you answer that.
Well, when you're in my position and you've got no idea about stuff, and people are telling you one thing or another, you have to educate yourself. That's what you have to do. You have to find out, because I'll tell you the reason why. A long time ago, we had a great fighter called John Thaxton, and he failed the drug test on nandrolone. And it was dealt in a different ways in them days. And it was down to supplement contamination. And we all rolled up very naive at a board meeting, and he got, I think, a 1.5-year ban and a £3,000 fine. And my dad was one of those people who just would not let it lie. So he got in touch with the top solicitors in London who specialised in this, and he got the decision overturned. He got the ban. By this time, John Thaxton had already done 9 months, but he got the rest of the ban overturned, and he never got his money back. He got a fine, never got the money back, but he cleared John Thaxton's name, and you can still search this up. So from that point on, when you're so naive, you start to learn what the process is. Because as a trainer, you've got to try and cut out every avenue of that happening. And there's other stories I can tell you. I could tell you a story about a very famous athlete from our gym who nearly got contaminated by somebody advising him to take something for a cold. And maybe that's a story for a book. Maybe that's a story from a book, for a book later on. And the athlete was going to take it because he had no idea. And my dad phoned me up and said, this fella's advising him to take this. And I said, if he takes that, he's going to fail a drug test. And luckily, he didn't take it. That's why you need to know. So that's why I know.
There you go, that, and hopefully that answers that for a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. And I think you should probably write a book, Dom, because you're full of a lot of stories, and I'd be quite... Yeah, but why have you never wrote a book?
I think I'll have to leave that book. I'll have to write it and do it, you know, after my death. Leave it then, because it'd probably upset a lot of people. But, you know, I'm not one of these... I'm not ever going to write a kiss and tell book. There's a lot of stories, good examples for people to learn off. You know, you could always, I suppose... you know, dig it into people, but what's the point? You know, it's experiences in life what you learn, and you just bear it in mind for next time. You know, there's lessons to be learned from everything, and I don't think that's probably why. I think you think the book that my dad did with Naz about Nazim Hamid, it kind of severed their relationship. Nobody ever likes the truth about themselves. I don't really like the truth about myself, to be honest. You know, when people tell you, you know what the problem with you is, and I went, yeah, I know what my problem is. I tell people straight. Some people don't like that, and it's all right telling people straight as long as you can have people telling you straight back. But people get offended when you do.
And then I want to speak to you about Joyce. We saw a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, he was stopped by Zile Zhang. You know, he went in again, took the rematch. A lot of people said he shouldn't have done it. He went and did it, and obviously the result was pretty bad for him. A lot of comments and reactions have come from that loss. I think the one that's been the most debatable ones come from Tony Bellew. You know, his comments have been, some have scrutinised it, some people are saying he was right, but in short, he's saying that Joe Joyce is now domestic level because his punch resistance is gone, and Fabio Wardley, who's a British champion right now, would basically beat him. Just your views on that knockout loss and them comments.
I don't think that Tony Bellew is very good as a commentator. I think he was all right as a boxer. And I've said this many, many times before. I'll never be watching reruns of his fight, and so I don't really give his opinion much credence when he's talking about other fighters. Joe Joyce has been at an high level for a long time, even as an amateur, and I think even now, if they made the fight with him and Fabio Wardley, would still beat Fabio Wardley, because Fabio Wardley is very limited. But he's done all right in a very sparse division at British level, really. So, you know, maybe there's just a bit of animosity there, because obviously Fabio Wardley is with Matchroom, Joe Joyce is with Frank Warren. So I think, you know, Tony's just digging it in a little bit, that's all.
Cool. I think Fabio he's left Matchroom. I think he's freelancing. I think he might be with Frank Warren now. He's fighting on the Fury and Ngannou undercard. Yeah.
Well, there you go. You miss some things, don't you? But you know, I'll have to take that back about maybe the cross-platform thing. But maybe, you know, I can't see Tony hyping that one up, saying that just to create that fight. But it's an interesting fight, and if that's a fight that Joe Joyce wants to have to get back into it, fair enough. But I think at the top level with Joe Joyce at 38 years old, he's not really in the position there to be, you know, mixing up in the world level, because he's always had, you know, the tag, the juggernaut, and he's always had a solid chin. But there's very few fighters in this game, and one of them is Golovkin, who can, you know, repeatedly take hard shots and have hard fights and still come through. Another fighter who had a tremendous chin was Cole Froch, and I just believe that you're just one of them type of fighters that, you know, some people can get hit with anything and they have the ability to get back up. And, you know, Tyson's another one. But with Joe Joyce, I think the chipping away over the fights and stopping a lot of shots with his face, eventually it's going to weaken at some point. It's going to affect him, and I think that's what happened in the Chang fight. That, you know, he got kind of found out in the first one. He sustained the eye damage, and he did look a little bit timid going into that second fight. And for a fella, you know, Chang, he had shorter arms than Joyce. He was, you know, he had all the disadvantages, but he still managed to break down Joe Joyce and get him.
And what about the element of Anthony Joshua's been stopped to come back. You know, Amir Khan had some big knockout losses, came back. Because boxing is quite brutal. When fighters get stopped, you do see people jumping on the bandwagon saying, oh, they need to retire, they're finished. Could there be an element of that?
No, because Khan's first knockout, I can remember the first knockout because we had actually Lee Noble and Tyan Booth sparring him for that guy. And he was only young, so you can come back from it when you're young, and you're going to keep coming back from it when you're young because you've still got your career in front of you. And what a fantastic job Frank Warren did. Even from that terrible knockout, they still managed to manoeuvre to make Amir Khan a world champion and box at a very high level. But he was young. Anthony Joshua, still young, still a young fighter when he got stopped. Joe Joyce is 38. Time is against you at 38. So it's a very dangerous division to be in. You know, you get your one-offs like your Bernard Hopkins in the 40s and the 50s still boxing, but eventually time caught up with Bernard Hopkins when he was 50. He got banged out of the ring. You can only get away with it so long before your chin doesn't hold up. So for Joe Joyce being at the elite level, fighting those fighters, it's, you know, and everybody knows now what his weakness is. It's a dangerous position to be in. So he may be able to mix it and quite easily clean up at domestic level. But I think as far as, you know, the top flight heavyweights now, I think he's you know, they've seen his Achilles heel.
You renamed Zhang Chang there. I've got to mention.
You had to say Zhang Chang, is that why you were laughing?
Yeah, I was laughing because I just remembered Jarrell Miller. I think previously you called him Baby Jake Miller, which people in the comments find quite amusing. It's Jarrell Miller. I think you called him Baby Jake Miller.
I called him Baby Jake. Baby Jake Matala I'm thinking of, but...
Yeah. But I think it's called Big Baby, but you call him Baby. Yeah.
Well, what I call him, Little Baby.
No, you said Baby Jake Miller.
It's like, it is what it is, isn't it? But, you know, Zhang Chang, Chang Zhang, whatever. It's like Can Zhu Can. It's like, you know, do we need to know? We know that he's Chinese and he's banged out Joe Joyce. That's the top and bottom of it. I don't pay particular attention to the name.
Yeah. I thought I'd mention because somebody will comment going, no, he's renamed Zhang. Seen in recent interviews, Billy Joe Saunders has pretty much announced that he's coming back this December. I think he said he's going to come back at light heavyweight and then move down to super middle sometime next year. There's potential a Eubank fight. I think Billy said in an interview the other day that, you know, he thinks Eubank can fight but he can't box and he'll always have the beating of him. So just your opinions on Billy coming back. You know, from the pictures I saw recently, it looks like, you know, he shed a lot of weight. And would he beat Eubank if they fought sometime next year?
Billy Joe Saunders is only 34 years old, and, you know, in my opinion, he's such a talented fighter. He's never really, in my opinion, fulfilled his potential, and I think he could. I do actually think he could have been the first man to beat Canelo. I do. You know, I do think he could have beat him, and it obviously didn't. But that's Billy Joe Saunders. And what you find with so many talented fighters is they rely on that talent so much, they're prepared to, you know, do silly weight cuts or cut training schedules or whatever and get in that ring and get away with it. And, you know, a lot of fighters have done that. A lot of fighters have done it. But eventually it's going to catch up with you at some point. You know, it's almost been 2.5 years since he boxed Canelo. You know, how many fights has Canelo had since then and how much money has he made? You know, for whatever reason, Billy's made a lot of money, not just in boxing, outside of boxing. He's very clued up in that sense. So what I've realised about Billy, and it's the same with Kell Brook, it's got to be something what really motivates you to do it. And I think nothing's really motivated Billy to get where he needs to be. So, you know, maybe he's going to fight in December, maybe not, who knows? But I think at 34 years old and 2.5 years out of the ring, the first fight's probably not going to be great. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a lot of time out. And if you're not living your life right outside of the ring and especially if you're overweight, you know, it's a difficult, you know, Billy can fight all day long. He's a natural fighter. What he doesn't find easy to do, and obviously because I've worked with him and he's worked with the nutritionist Greg Marriott, is they don't find it hard they find it very hard to diet. That's, you know, the fighting's the easy bit for them, for him anyway. But the the dieting and the discipline of diet is very, very difficult. So it'd be great to see him back in December, but I've just seen a clip on your thing of him talking to Simon Jordan, and if that's a recent interview and you know, he doesn't look great at the weight there, but maybe it's not a recent interview, so hopefully he's lost some weight. Light heavyweight, hard division, there's some killers in that division. So it's a hard division, you know, to come back into. And, you know, for me personally, I think Bellew was just a fantastic fighter at middleweight. And there should be no reason, even at the age he is now, not to be able to get back to 11-6. There shouldn't be. It's just more hard work. And it's really, that's probably the division where he probably would make the most of an impression and most of a noise.
It should be exciting. I think either way, the fans love him, and I think the interaction that he gets online, I think it'd be exciting times, and I look forward to that. Lee Wood, Josh Warrington, you've got vast experience with both men. Contrasting opinions from a lot of people. You know, I spoke to Dave Allen the other day. He's got Josh Warrington winning a close points decision. I spoke to somebody else who said Lee Wood by knockout. The bookies haven't really gone that far ahead. You've got really good experience with both of them. To break it down for us.
You know, Josh Warrington, you know, he was on the rise, you know, a long time ago now. You look back at his career, he did really well as the champion, and then he came up against Laura where it all started going wrong, and, you know, he's had defeats since. And, you know, Lee Wood's late 30s now, I think he's 34. It's Lee Wood's time at the minute. Everybody has the time in boxing. Everybody does. If you're lucky, you manage to stretch that out for a long time. You know, people like Cole Froch, Ricky Hatton did it. But what you tend to find, once you start putting 2-3 losses together, you tend to find that's when your form's, you know, kind of running out. And how I measure fighters, you look at Lee Wood, he got beat by Jazza Dickens and never really looked back from that point. And even the knockout by Laura, when you think about that, the way he came back from it, recovered, regrouped, and beat Laura, you've got to say that, you know, it's in Lee Wood's favour, this fight. It's in Sheffield, it's not in Leeds, it's not in Nottingham. You know, the fans are going to turn up, but there's no really home advantage there. And I think Josh Warrington only ever fights one way. That's come forward, put the pressure on you, you know, make you make mistakes, bombard you with as many shots as he can. Where Lee Wood now is like, can be more measured. He's been in with the big puncher Laura who beat Warrington, then got a draw because of obviously the cut. So I think psychologically Lee Wood's got the advantage. The momentum's with him, and there's a very good chance if Lee Wood keeps himself calm, he could end up stopping Josh Warrington, because Josh Warrington's been in some tough fights of late, and the wear and tear on him is, you know, going to leave him open to get, you know, caught with something, taking a risk. Probably an uppercut from Lee Wood. Lee Wood's got a very good backhand, a straight right hand or an uppercut. Punches very hard off that backhand. He's also got a very, very good left hook. But it's whether Lee Wood can just keep the Warrington from pressuring him too much and find his shots, not get too flustered. So, you know, it'd be an interesting fight. So I would say, you know, Lee Wood's going to win the fight by points or stoppage, late stoppage probably.
Do you think it's a close fight up until that moment?
It'll be first 3 or 4 rounds, 5 rounds. It'll be, you know, Josh Warrington trying to keep the pace on him, trying to put the pressure, trying to volumise, you know, throw volume of shots, trying to settle Lee Wood, get him out of his stride, because that's what he's got to do. He's not got to let Lee Wood settle. He's got to maul him. He's got to keep pressure. He's got to keep close to his chest. He's got to give him any room. And it's just how Lee Wood handles that. And if Lee Wood handles that in the first 3 or 4 rounds, he handles that kind of pressure, then you can look at Lee Wood winning the fight. If in that 3 or 4 rounds it's close and Josh Warrington's having some success, then, you know, Lee Wood should be able to get the measure of Josh Warrington in the first 4 or 5 rounds quite easily, and if he hasn't, then it's going to be a closer fight than expected. But if Lee Wood's handling that pressure early on and controlling the ring, you know, and controlling what Josh Warrington's doing, then it's a win for Lee Wood.
Looking forward to it.